it's just the start of a new journey. And I felt like that's how life has been for me. After my diagnosis, there's been kind of a new start to this journey and a refresh opportunity for my faith and leading into opportunities to share my faith and share my testimony a little bit.
We're so excited that you are back for another episode of It's a Rare Story. Today I am interviewing Jireh, and I'm so excited to dive into his story. And yeah, so my first question is, what is it that you were born with?
Hey Sarah, thank you for having me on the show here. Yeah, I was diagnosed with Fabry disease, and I found out when a little after 30, and I'm 33 now. So yeah, I have Fabry disease. Was diagnosed after some health scares here.
Okay. Um, when so you said that you were diagnosed at 30. Is that typical for Fabry disease, or is it
Yeah.
like not so typical? What's the journey with that?
Yeah. So with Fabry disease, there's a early onset or a late onset, and the mutation that I have is a late onset, and so that's typical for that. You usually get diagnosed in the third decade or fourth decade of life, and for the early onset, the childhood diagnosis is pretty common in that space. The patient or the person will have symptoms that will show kind of on an earlier age,
Okay.
which leads to
What?
the
Oh,
diagnosis. Yeah.
yeah. So what are like the typical symptoms, if there are typical symptoms for
Yeah.
Fabry?
For early onset, my understanding is children will experience some pain, like nerve pain, also some GI issues, and some skin rashes that aren't very typical, and that will kind of warrant kind of exam and follow up with a doctor. And also, I believe another common one is the lack like heat intolerance, and some people have kind of an inability to sweat, and so the heat intolerance is very common. And for later onset, like me, strokes is common, as well as renal issues, renal disease, hearing loss, and heart issues are found in the late onset mutation for Fabry disease.
Okay. And I'm guessing were some of the just the health things that you were dealing with, were they what you had just listed with like strokes and
Yeah,
stuff like that?
I was diagnosed after my first stroke. It was a brain aneurysm, and that led the doctors to kind of question, like, hey, a healthy 30-year-old male, no no pertinent history to kind of warrant his presentation. They found very abnormal blood vessels that kind of right up my neck, up to my brain. And when they were repairing the brain aneurysm, they they saw these abnormal arteries. And so once I was stabilized and working through discharge, all the doctors were like, "You got to go see a geneticist," and so I did. And yeah, after two panels of gene mutation testing, and a second stroke, which wasn't related specifically to the Fabry disease. It was more or less the stent was healing and formed a small clot, which led to my second stroke. But that second stroke led my geneticist to run a second panel, which yielded the Fabry disease diagnosis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's been quite the journey for you.
Oh, totally. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Just not just me, but my wife, my kid, and my family.
Wow. Yeah. Like, did they have any like reactions to this? Like, were they supportive? Were
Oh yeah.
they like how was that?
Oh yeah. Throughout this journey, I've been so blessed and fortunate to have my wife, my parents, my in-laws, my sisters, and just kind of my whole family, my extended family, be very supportive throughout this. I remember getting the phone call from the genetic counselor after they ran the first test and meeting with the geneticist. My wife and I had a video call and they told us the results like, hey, there are just VUSs on this first panel, and so we don't have a diagnosis, a treatable diagnosis. Um, maybe we'll do follow up, and maybe we'll do another panel in the next 5 years or so. And so I think at that time I was still processing everything, and I was still in the stroke recovery. I was doing PT, OT, speech therapy, rehab. So I was focused on that, and I hadn't had process like, okay, I have something else going on, so it's a little undiagnosed. And then a month comes by, passes, and then I have my second stroke, which leads my geneticist to do another gene panel. And then that's when we had a phone call with the genetic counselor. Hey, we have your results. Are you available? The geneticist wants to meet with you as quickly as possible, to get treatment started. And so after that visit, my wife and I had a sense of relief a little bit, just to know that this might have caused the strokes and it's a treatable mutation. And so there was relief there, but also looking back at it, there is a little bit of naiveness um, on that, because I was like, oh yeah, I'm so for the treatment for Fabry disease, my specific mutation requires enzyme replacement therapy, and it's IV therapy every 2 weeks. And the alternative therapy for other specific mutation is chaperone therapy, and that's an oral medication. And unfortunately, my mutation isn't treatable for that mutation. And
Oh
so,
wow.
and so I was like, yeah, I'll do the IV therapy. And spoke to my family, and they were very supportive. Looking at, okay, every 2 weeks, I'm gonna have to go into the infusion center. I'll have to figure out who's gonna drive me, and that's where my family really like stepped in. That's where my wife stepped in and made themselves available to take me to my appointments. And I'm very, very blessed and thankful for that.
Wow. And so you got diagnosed at 30. Like, what was life like before the diagnosis?
Yeah, the life before diagnosis. Yeah, it was, as you imagine, as a young professional, young dad. My son actually, before my aneurysm, my son was about to turn 1, and we were going to celebrate his first birthday later that day, because my aneurysm happened like 3 a.m. Saturday morning, and so yeah, life before diagnosis. I you know I had a I was working as a clinical trials nurse in oncology, and I had my career ahead of me. I had my family. We had plans, future plans on my thought of what life would be like. And yeah, you don't really plan for unexpected things like a stroke or a gene mutation diagnosis or red disease. But yeah, life was I would say good. And looking back at it now and being able to process where I'm now, I feel like life I've learned that is actually better where I'm at now, mentally, physically, and spiritually too.
Wow, how would you say that it's better?
Um, I would say I've learned a lot about myself. I have a lot of time to think a little and reflect and process what life was before diagnosis and also what life can be now moving forward. And I found that I had a lot of my identity in my career. I put a lot of my identity um, and my worth in my career as a nurse. And I think losing that made me realize, made me challenge myself, and it like made me see that I can still be a good husband, I could still be a good dad, and a position or a career um, didn't have to be the main thing of who I was. And I'm embracing that today, now moving forward. I'm embracing life uh, as a stay at home dad and embracing the time that I have with my son and watching him grow. I've realized I would miss so many things, and I'm able to connect with him in other ways, even though there were expectations I had as a young father um, that I saw that we would do, you know, as he gets older. And after diagnosis and going through all that, I thought that I wasn't going to be able to um, be the dad that he deserved. And I realized the most important thing that I can provide for my wife and my son is just my presence and me being there and being able to enjoy the time, whatever we're doing, whether it's like cooking a meal together or eating together, or my son loves toppling dominoes right now. He's totally into that. And I surprise him when he gets home. I'll set up like a small toppling thing, and he'll come home and he'll knock it down, and it's something that we could share. And he's taking drum lessons right now, and he's um, I would say I able to kind of share that passion for music with him. And yeah, and he recently st- learned, or not learned, he recently did like a short basketball camp, a little 5 week thing. And so um, we enjoy that a little bit. I pretend to play defense against him while he's like playing dribbling, and then he'll pass me his little Nerf ball, and then he's like, I think he tries to say alley oop, but he says alley oop. And so I don't know. I'm like, yeah, pass me the ball. He's like, alley oop. I'm like, what is he trying to say? He's like, no, dunk it, dunk it. I'm like, oh, okay. And then I was like, dunk it. And so like little moments like that, I've learned I just need to embrace that, because you know I could have easily not have this opportunity. Um, and so I'm embracing the things that I can do and focusing on the things that I can do versus the things that I felt like I lost with the diagnosis and with the strokes. Um, yeah.
Like, it's so cool hearing all that you're now able to do with your son. And just having the opportunity to really be that stay-at-home dad, did it take a while to change that mind shift of what it was when you first got diagnosed to really like what that would mean for the rest of your life?
Yeah, I would say it's a continuing process.
Okay.
It's taken a couple years and then some. I think I'm at 3 years since diagnosis, and so I feel that I'm in a different mindset now since diagnosis, and I would say just recently, even like maybe a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, is when I've realized, okay, like these little pity parties that I'm throwing myself isn't gonna really help. I've learned that grieving your life before is okay. You're gonna have those emotions, but I think not sitting in it for too long will allow you to move forward. And I think that's what I was doing. I would go in this cycle of like feeling good and moving forward, and then like I'll sit in that loss, and then I'll just kind of be in that mindset and mentality versus understanding that, okay, I need to embrace this fully because life is going to bring challenges. Life is going to always going to bring something new. And I think when I've changed my perspective on focusing on the things that I can do versus the things that I can't anymore, it has really relieved kind of that weight on my shoulder and on my mind. And it has helped me kind of see myself, and it goes back to kind of seeing yourself through God's lens and seeing myself worthy of love and grace. And I think when I believed it and like embraced that, that's when I can extend that grace and extend that love fully, because I think you can't share something that you haven't experienced, right? And so it's harder to extend grace to others if you yourself haven't felt that or experienced that and embraced that. And I think now I've been able to see that, and it's still a work in progress for sure. It's a constant everyday reminder like, hey, like, yeah, I might not be able to do something, or I might not be able to attend something, but this is what I can do. And I'm going to focus on that and embrace that and really, really, um, really lean into that aspect of life.
It's really cool. Like, how has your faith been transformed, like through this journey that you've been on?
I think my faith has definitely been challenged, and I think I've asked God why many, many times. And I think I'm sure he answered it a few times, but I didn't like the answer, and so I kept asking. Right? Maybe this time, but my faith has definitely been stronger, and I've realized that without it, I wouldn't have I wouldn't have this ability to continue living. And with my faith, it brings hope, and with hope, it allows you to continue to take every day, take every opportunity to be a blessing. And I've learned that I can be a blessing even though I might have XYZ, or I might not be able to do XYZ, and I could still live a fulfilling life. And yeah, and I think that's something that I'd want to share to people listening, other rare disease people. And life is gonna look a little different, and expectations might have to be changed, but you can still have a beautiful life, and you can still live a fulfilling life.
Yeah, and it's because I was born with a rare disease as well, and our rare diseases are actually in the same
Yeah,
category as in the lysosomal diseases. But it's so true with like, yeah, like this diagnosis, like it's not the end of the journey at all. Your life like might
exactly.
look different. It might look different than what it was before, but that's okay. And it's not something that we should try to like run away from. It's something that we really should try to embrace as best as we can. Because of course it's going to be like, oh my goodness, like I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
How
Oh my
do I
gosh.
like how do I continue on? I don't know if you have any like stories of like I don't know what to do. But if you do, like you can share them.
Oh
Do
yeah.
you have
I
any stories?
Yeah, I would say I think recently, or I say recently a lot, but I feel like 3 years of being diagnosed is still pretty recent, and so I'm still kind of freshish, if that's a word I'm making up. Anyways, but
Oh, I love it.
um, and I would say that I was at a crossroads of like, okay, really accepting like I'm not gonna be able to go back to my old job. Basically, I went through the process of the department based on my roles as a nurse and my limitations. They weren't able to. They had to terminate me and separate me from the department. And there was a time where I'm like, oh no, I think I could still do it. I was trying to like figure out ways to kind of bargain, right? You go through that bargaining phase, and I think that's what I was trying to do. I actually, at one point, I think I just had gotten discharged for a recent admission, and I tried to apply for like another nursing job, and I was like, what am I doing? Like, and that's when I asked, like, okay, God, what did you want me to do with everything that's happening? I love what you said about after diagnosis isn't the end; it's just the start of a new journey. And I felt like that's how life has been for me. After my diagnosis, there's been kind of a new start to this journey and refresh opportunity for my faith and leading into opportunities to share my faith and share my testimony a little bit and using my experiences to share his goodness, even through tough times. I'm thankful that I have this opportunity, and I'm thankful for you, Sarah, for this platform that you've given me to share. Um, and that's one of the special things I feel that I've experienced connecting in the rare disease community, and I'm just so thankful for that. Yeah, and I think I'm just like reflecting on that what you said about the rare disease diagnosis is just the start of a new journey, and that's something that I'm always gonna hang on to. So thank you for that, Sarah.
It's not from me at all. It's from the Lord.
Oh yeah.
um, yeah. But it's definitely interesting, like the whole journey. But we still have things in life that like make us who we are, and like interests and hobbies and things like that. It's not always just like diagnosis and like this is like how this is I can't do anything else in life now. So what are like some hobbies and interests that you have?
Yeah. Uh, it's interesting that you mentioned that because I definitely had that mentality after diagnosis. Once the diagnosis settled in my mind and like all the changes, and that's when I started spiraling down this deep dark place that I don't want to trickle down to again, I guess. And so it's funny that you mentioned that. It's like, yeah, I felt like this is it, right? But it really isn't. Some hobbies that I'm able to continue on is I started taking some guitar lessons. I play for church already. I play some rhythm guitar, but I wanted to challenge myself to learn a little bit more than just the basic chords, your open string chords, or and so I started learning a little bit more. That way, when my son gets older too, it's something that we could share and we could experience together. And basketball has always kind of been a passion of mine. You know, I'm not the tallest. I'm 5'6", and you know, most of my highlights in high school was a lot of this and a lot of yeah, go. and but you know, I still enjoy. I found that I could still enjoy, you know, maybe like getting some free throws up or just jump shots up and staying within that limitation of I with my diagnosis and those abnormal blood vessels, the doctors told me I can't lift more than 20 pounds. I can't play contact sports because of risk for bleeding, and you know you want to decrease the risk of any trauma. And that's something that I continue to grieve on, but I've realized I could still enjoy basketball. Just it's just gonna look a little different, you know. I'm not gonna be playing pickup basketball, or you know, I'm not gonna be playing in a rec league or anything. But I could still shoot around. I could play horse. I could play trick shots. But yeah, it's something I could still enjoy. Um, and let's see, I think something that I'm trying to get back at is I used to enjoy cooking, but with the kind of like the post-stroke brain fog and like the memory stuff, I'm still working on it. I've graduated to like using basic oven or like air fryer meals and some basic stovetop meals, but um, because another hobby of mine is eating, so so I was like eating and trying to learn how to cook. But yeah, I I've learned that it's okay to burn your pasta or forget that's gonna happen. And so sometimes you forget that you've left the stove on and the water is boiling for a while now, and maybe all the water has evaporated. But you know that's what Alexa and other memory aids have helped me in this journey, and it's just kind of figuring out ways to live life now, with kind of the adjustments that I've had to make with post stroke and post diagnosis, and yeah, still knowing that I can still enjoy these hobbies and enjoy life. Yeah.
So you mentioned about, you know, loving to eat food as a hobby. What are some foods that you just absolutely love?
Oh man, it's kind of a long list, but I would probably say not to sound too basic, but pizza is kind of really close to my heart. A really good kind of margarita pizza, I think, good quality ingredients, good crust, well-made crust, and some good cheese and the tomato sauce has to not be too acidic, nice and a little bit of sweetness. Pizza done right is always good. I would say good quality sushi is good, and now I'm just kind of listing things that I've eaten in the past couple of weeks. But I would say pizza, sushi is kind of like top for me, and then Filipino traditional food, I would say, has to be on like my top list of kind of foods that I enjoy, and and that's another thing. Kind of going back to hobbies with and kind of interests. I've been trying to learn how to cook Filipino dishes as much as I can. I recently graduated from to using basic appliances like air fryer or like the oven and stovetop here and there. I'm still learning that I need to set reminders either on Alexa or a timer app that hey, like you need to take this off the stove because I've burnt some pasta. I didn't realize the pasta wasn't getting into the water and the dry pasta caught on fire and it no big deal. It was a small little fire, didn't spread anywhere, and so I'm still what is it? Using the stove under close supervision. That's what it is. And but to connect it to Filipino food, one of the things that I've been trying to do more and to connect with my parents is to learn some of their recipes that they grew up on, and one of them is like learning how to make empanadas. But I learned that my parents don't really have a recipe for things, and they'll tell me like a measurement using their hands. They're like, "Oh, this much salt right here," and I'm like, what is that? Like, is that a teaspoon? Is that a tablespoon? They're like, yeah, you just kind of put it in there and just kind of taste. And just recently with empanada recipe that's from my mom's side, she was able to kind of write it down with the help of my sisters. We were able to write down a recipe that was close to or right exactly to their side of the family that's been passed down, and that's something that I want to try to continue on. And so every holiday, either New Year's or Christmas, when I have my cousins over and my siblings over, we try to make empanadas, and so at least we have the recipe written down, and so whenever we can get together, we'll be able to do that and make little dough balls together and measure out the salt with our palms.
Gotta love the the cooking with not using the measurements. I don't know about you, but I am more of a baker because I
Oh,
like
okay.
the
Yes.
like you have to like use this specific amount
Yes.
of flour or the sugar, whatever it is. And
Oh
so
yeah.
I like it because it's very structured, but when it comes to cooking, it's not as structured, and a lot of it's like, ah, does it taste good? Is this
It
good? Like,
yeah. It comes with practice. I've learned that you kind of remember what flavors really work well together and what to balance with, right? So if it's like oh, do I need to balance the acidity? Do I need to balance the saltiness? And part of it is a lot of trial and error, and I guess it kind of in life, you you have to learn by experience at times, and you also have to remember your wins. Like, hey, maybe this dish wasn't a knockout. Maybe what I made we're probably not gonna ever have ever again, and that's okay. You experienced it, and you were able to taste that, and and probably not can decide in the future. And I don't want to taste that again, and so we're not gonna have that again.
Oh my gosh, I love that. But to just finish out the conversation that we're
Yeah,
having today, one last question for you. So if you have a parent or an adult that is coming to you with, a diagnosis that they just received
yeah.
for themselves or for their child, what would something be that you would tell them?
I would go back to what I said about about life is gonna look a little different, and your expectations have will likely have to be changed. And but just as you said, life doesn't end at just the diagnosis. Your story doesn't stop at diagnosis, and understanding that you can still enjoy life moving forward, that you are worthy, you know, you're worthy of love, you're worthy of grace, and you're not alone. There's this great big community that will help you, will help you see that you're not alone and will support you. And if you haven't found a community, I would Google is a good starting place. Just typing diagnosis support group, or even on Instagram or social media, you'll find people, and that's where we met. You and me, Sarah, is on social media, and I'm so happy that we were able to connect, and most importantly, to like never lose hope. You know, we talked about faith and having faith and being able to see that you can live a life and share this life with others, and whether it's your child, whether it's your partner or your family and friends, you can still live a beautiful life.
So true.
Yeah.
So true. And I'm so excited that we had the opportunity to
Yeah.
sit down and just have this conversation today, Jireh.
Thank you for
Um,
having me.
of course, of course. And we just thank all of the listeners for listening to this episode of It's a Rare Story. Make sure to subscribe and to follow and all the things.